All right, today we are diving into a really fascinating text from way back in 1959. And it tells a story that you might not expect, the story about a deep, centuries-old connection between two of Asia's great nations, India and Japan.
I mean, think about it for a second. At first glance, they seem worlds apart, right? You've got thousands of miles of ocean between them, and their modern histories are just completely different. But this source material tells us we need to look way, way deeper than that.
Because it argues there's this incredible unseen bridge that's been standing for well over 1,000 years. And this isn't a bridge made of stone or steel. It's built on something so much more powerful, a shared sense of faith, art, and philosophy that literally helped shape the very soul of Japan. So, you might be asking, where does a story like this even begin? Well, it wasn't with some big treaty or a fancy royal delegation. Nope, it all started with a chance encounter after a disaster at sea. Let's go back to the year 799 AD. A ship wrecks, and a young man from India, just 20 years old, washes up on the shores of Japan's Mikawa province. He doesn't have much, but among his few belongings are some precious seeds, something that would totally change Japanese agriculture: cotton seeds. And according to this source, that single random event was how cotton was introduced to Japan for the very first time. And this moment, it tells you everything about the level of respect Japan had for India at the time. The locals didn't just help him out. They actually renamed their village Tenjakumura, which means heaven village. Why? Because to them, this stranger had come from a heavenly land. But as amazing as that is, it was just the beginning. The real, strongest pillar of this unseen bridge was still to come. Yeah, the true foundation of this whole connection, the one that would shape Japanese culture for centuries to come, was the arrival of Buddhism from India. And to really get a grip on its impact, the author brings up this pretty startling thought experiment from the scholar Dr. D. Suzuki. He says, just imagine for a second, what if you could just snap your fingers and erase every single trace of Buddhism from Japan, every temple, every treasure? What would even be left? So, what's the answer? Well, according to this text, the loss would be absolutely catastrophic. A huge chunk of Japan's classic painting, sculpture, and architecture gone. Music and drama vanished. But it goes even deeper. The very origins of formal education, social services like hospitals, even basic infrastructure like roads and wells, all of it would just disappear. So what this really gets at is that the source is painting a picture of these early Buddhist monks as not just spiritual leaders, but as the literal pioneers of Japanese society. They weren't just sitting in temples praying. They were out there building the country from the ground up. Okay. So with that kind of deep foundation laid, let's look at how it blossomed into these beautiful, distinct expressions of Japanese culture that we all recognize today. You've probably heard of ikebana, the Japanese art of flower arrangement. Well, the source traces its origins back to a simple story in the 9th century. An emperor sees some chrysanthemums by a palace pool, feels inspired, and starts to arrange them. That single act, which is really rooted in a Buddhist appreciation for nature and the beauty of the moment, grew into this incredible, world-renowned art form. And the connection? It gets even more fundamental. It runs right to the core of communication itself. The source claims that the Japanese 50-sound syllabary, a key part of their writing system, is actually an adaptation of the ancient Indian Sanskrit alphabet. And this reverence for India wasn't just in high art or language, it was part of popular culture. There's this old folk song that just captures the feeling perfectly. The lyrics basically say, when we're getting patterns for our new kimono, we should put Indian designs on them. That was the dream. The philosophy itself went so deep, it actually influenced core values. Take the concept of kuyo. It's a memorial service. But here's the thing. In Japan, it's not just for people. A painter might hold a kuyo for his worn-out brushes. And this comes straight from the Buddhist teaching of universal salvation, this profound idea that all things, whether they're alive or not, have a kind of spirit that deserves respect. And maybe most surprising of all, this connection doesn't just stop at philosophy. It extends to the divine. It's like a whole pantheon of gods made the long journey right across the sea. If you look closely, so many deities worshipped in Japan are pretty much direct counterparts to Hindu gods. The Indian goddess of learning, Saraswati, is worshipped as Benten. Ganesh, the remover of obstacles, becomes Shauten. Lakshmi, the goddess of beauty, is known as Kishi Joten. And even the creator god Brahma is called Bonten. So this isn't just a simple name swap. It really shows how spiritual ideas can travel, adapt, and weave themselves into the very fabric of a whole new culture.
You can see the spiritual link in major festivals too. The Hindu ceremony of Shrav is all about honoring the souls of your ancestors. And what do you know? Its core purpose, and even its timing, is shared with Japan's famous Bon Festival, celebrated on the exact same day, July 13th.
So what are we supposed to make of all this? The author, writing this back in 1959, he didn't see these connections as just dusty old relics of the past. To him, they were a living, breathing part of Japan's identity. He actually says he laughs at people who visit and say Japan has become perfectly Americanized. He's basically saying, don't judge a culture by what's on the surface. Don't just look at the business suits and think you understand everything.
And that's his ultimate point. The suits, the modern buildings, all the new trends, that's just the outer layer. Underneath it all, he says, lies the immortal soul of Japan, a soul that was forged over centuries by these deep, unseen connections to India.
And that really leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it? This text from 1959 was wrestling with this big question of cultural identity, and it feels more relevant today than ever. It really makes you wonder, in our own lives, with everything changing so fast, what are the parts of our culture, those unseen connections, that are truly immortal? What's the stuff that really defines who we are?